The history of early Portuguese settlers in East and Southern Africa. Portugal was a small, poor, feudal society during the 15th century with underdeveloped industry and unproductive agriculture. This explains the early exploration of the Portuguese in Africa and other parts of the world as they searched for better opportunities. Records show that the Portuguese first made contact with Africans in 1443, and thereafter several Portuguese ships sailed around the southern tip of Africa and the east as they traveled to India. One famous Portuguese sailor is Vasco da Gama, who led the first expedition around South Africa. And due to the advanced shipbuilding skills of the Portuguese, they transported goods between African states by small ports they established. They also quickly realized that trade was already taking place in Africa and that Africans did not require African goods, but movement of goods between trading partners. In addition, there was ongoing trade between Africans and Indians already. However, their first encounters with Africans were not always peaceful. After they failed to infiltrate East Africa, the Portuguese tried to force Swahili traders by destroying established trading ports and coastal cities and replacing them with their own. One of the ports they established was called Sofala in 1505. And some of the poorer and the less influential Portuguese became discontent and began to work as mercenaries for African kings. In return, the African kings offered them land they could rule over. These lands were called prazos, and the owners of the lands prazeros. However, some imbalances were created through this system. The Africans who occupied the land given to the prazero continued to farm, but they had to pay tribute in crops and labor. The Portuguese called these farmers colonos, and when they eventually took some as slaves, they referred to them as chicundas. Chicundas were often considered outcasts in their societies because they had lost a war to another chief or a king. And while some of the chicundas worked on the land, others became traders and miners for the prazeros. Portuguese prazeros were ruthless and ruled by force and oppression, and mirroring the feudal system they were accustomed to in Europe at the time. So gradually, the prazo system faded as more Portuguese settlers moved to towns along the Zambezi River. Eventually, the Portuguese colonized the present-day region and the country of Mozambique in the 19th century.